Hi everyone. Welcome to this session on seamless upgrades, migrating from Airflow 2.x to 3. So my name is Ankit Chaurasia, and I work as a senior software engineer at Astronomer. I'm also a Airflow contributor. So in this session, majorly I'll be going in depth with respect to the migration steps, and I'll also end this session with a demo of Airflow 2 migration to 3 on a standalone as well as on an Astro deployment. So to get started, I mean, there was a lot of talk during this keynote session in the morning why we should upgrade, right? So we have all these features to utilize, right? So I highly encourage you to upgrade to Airflow 3, and this is how we will do it. So just to give on a high level, right? So these are all the steps that would be involved for you to getting started with upgrade process and deploying it in production for Airflow 3. So first, you want to just make sure you have the right Airflow and Python version, and your code is compatible with Airflow 3. So one good advice I would like to give is to basically take a backup of your metadata instance. Uh, and optionally, I would also suggest pruning the data like old XComs, etc., basically for faster upgrades. Next is you want to make your DAG code basically compatible with Airflow 3. So we already have a rough linter for that. I'll be basically going in detail with respect to that as well. And Airflow configs has also been changed as part of Airflow 3, right? So we have a CLI tool called Airflow config update, which essentially fixes all the breaking changes for you in airflow.cfg file. And finally, you need to take care of all other breaking changes. So by that, like there's a whole change in terms of access to the database, right? So you need to refactor in the way you are accessing the database right now. Uh, the concept of SubDAGs has been removed completely. Similarly, you might need to adjust scheduling behaviors, etc. Right? And finally, basically your DAG code as well as your environment is ready for the upgrade. So you'd want to do that upgrade on your test environment, and finally do the same in your production, and basically monitor and make sure that the production environment runs with stability. So now let's move on to the first step, just trying to make sure the prerequisites are taken care of. So Airflow must be ideally, so Airflow version for you to be able to upgrade to Airflow 3 must be higher than 2.7.x, right? Uh, and to use Airflow config update command, uh, you that command is essentially available from 2.11. So being in 2.11 is also a very good scenario to handle the config updates. Python 3.8 is no longer supported in Airflow 3. So you need to make sure you need to make sure that you're in Python 3.9 or higher. Similarly, PostgreSQL 12 is not supported in Airflow 3. So 13 or higher is recommended. Similarly, uh, there's a standard provider which you need to install, which I'll be diving deep in latter part of this session. Now, before starting the upgrade, it is highly recommended that you make the backup of your Airflow task instance. So specifically, your Airflow's metadatabase before starting the migration process. If you did not make the backup, and let's say if the migration fails, uh, then you might end up in the half migrated state. So by that could happen, like let's say you have a network connection issue between your Airflow CLI and the database during the migration. So having a backup is definitely an important precaution you should have. Uh, another another important thing to note is, while you have been running Airflow instance for a long time, you might accumulate a substantial amount of data which is no longer required. For example, let's say old XCom data. So schema change is part of your Airflow 3 upgrade process. So this schema change take up like a really long time if your database is large. So for faster and safer migrations, I would recommend cleaning up your Airflow metadatabase before actually doing the upgrade. And that can be done using Airflow db clean command just to prune or trim the Airflow database. And finally, you also want to make sure all of your Airflow DAGs are serializable just to like not add additional complexity. Now, moving on to the third step. So in Airflow 3, as you know, like there are several deprecated parameters and import path, right? So that means you might need to remove or change, refactor your DAG code essentially. And to make your current DAG code compatible with Airflow 3. So the Ruff linter is a Python linter and a code transformation tool that can be used to check your Airflow DAG for the compatibility with Airflow 3. So the first step is essentially just to install the Ruff in your Python virtual environment. Next step would be to just run this command called Ruff check DAGs. So basically the path to your DAG code along with the Ruff rule you want to run that on. So that is AIR 30 or 31, right? So what this would do is it would show you all the Ruff linting issues. So the next step is you can also add in --fix command. So this would mostly fix most of the linting issues, but it wouldn't fix all of them. So once you run it again after fixing the Ruff issues, you would have to fix certain issues manually as well. So I'll do a demo during the end of the session. And for someone who is using Astro CLI, right, Astro deb upgrade test already has Ruff lint enabled in it, so it makes it quite easy. So there are two types of like Ruff rules while upgrading from Airflow 2 to 3. Certain rules, for example, which has breaking chains, or basically let's say there are certain imports which are completely removed in Airflow 3, right? So those are part of AIR 30, and these are mandatory changes. And AIR 31 are, again, these are the changes which will be removed in future, and some of them are already removed in 3.1. Now, I already spoke about this. So on basically, if you are using Astro CLI, in that case, there's a command called Astro deb upgrade test, which you could use, which already has Ruff linting already enabled in it. Now, let's move on to the configurations, right? Once you're done with the code changes, the next step is changing your Airflow configurations, which is compatible with Airflow 3. So Airflow CLI has a command called Airflow config update, which is available from 2.11. So there are two types of config changes. There are certain config changes which are breaking, but certain config changes are good to have. So when you run Airflow config update on your CLI, it just shows a list of all deprecated, moved, or breaking changes, and then you could review those changes, and then finally run Airflow config update --fix, which would fix all the breaking changes for you. And before doing that, it would also take a backup of the old configuration files. Moving on, so there are like 4 different types of configuration changes actually. So there are certain default value changes. So what I mean by that is, for example, let's say in scheduler, we used to have catch up by default, which used to be true before, but it has been changed to false now, right? Similarly, there are certain options which has been renamed. For example, we used to have web server host in web server. It has been renamed to api.host. Similarly, there are certain options which are completely removed. For example, there used to be error log file in web server, which is not there anymore. And finally, there are certain options which were valid before, but which are not valid anymore. So, for example, in core, the was parallelism at 0 was possible, but right now it needs to be a positive integer. Now, moving on, and this is a very important step. After doing the code changes in your DAG and doing a configuration changes, again, Airflow 3 being the major version, that comes with number of breaking changes that can affect your DAG depending on what features you have been using. So in Airflow 3, one of the major thing is you cannot access and you should not access database directly. And this access has been removed right now. So to interact with and retrieve information with respect to Airflow task instance, you can use Airflow REST API version 2 specifically. And there are changes with respect to scheduling as well. So schedule interval and timetable are now deprecated, and the default schedule now is none. Similarly, the catch-up was set to false by default in configuration level previously, but now it's set to true. Days ago, function has been completely removed. Execution date has been renamed to logical date, and it can also be none. So that is for inference execution specifically. Another important point is XCom pickling is no longer allowed when using the default XCom backend in Airflow 3 for security reasons. So in that case, what you need to do is you can use a custom XCom backend with a custom serialization to pass the data in between tasks that Airflow cannot serialize by default. And there are some commonly used operators. I think this all of our DAG has, which used to be bundled with Airflow core packages. For example, Bash operator, Python operator. So they have been split into a separate package called standard. So you need to install that as well. So after you're done with all this, right? Let's say you have your Airflow 2.1. You did all the code changes based on the rough recommendation. You did the configuration changes. You took care of all the breaking changes. Then finally, you can install Airflow 3 as a requirement. And next thing you would want to do is you would want to do Airflow DB migrate or upgrade to upgrade the metadata base. And then you can change the startup script as well. So now you would have API server as well as a DAG processor to run. So I'll have a small demo for you. Yeah. So this is a demo DAG which I just wrote, and the idea is I am just trying to present with Airflow standalone right now. So previously we used to have a dummy operator. We don't have that anymore. So this is an example DAG which is compatible with Airflow 2.11, right? So the first thing I do is I just want to install, create a virtual environment, install the Airflow 2.11. Yeah, so now if I do with Airflow, you can see it's 2.11. The next thing would be to init the database, create the username for logging in using the UI. I am just disabling the example, loading example DAGs. And then I finally run Airflow standalone. So if I do that, and now I should have Airflow UI for 2.11, which shows this specific DAG. Now let's say if I were to migrate this or upgrade to Airflow 3.1, right? So the first step, as we discussed, would be to take care of our DAG code. We would install Ruff first, run the Ruff check. So you can see now the Ruff showed you all the linting errors. I've already commented the next correct line. For example, now we have empty operator. Days ago is not there anymore. Bash operator is from standard. Similar is the case for Python operator. Logical late is the thing we have right now. So after all these code changes, you could also do this with minus minus fix command, and some of them would be fixed automatically for you. So yeah, now if I run the Ruff command again, so it says all checks passed. So the current DAG is compatible with Airflow 3. Now the next step is to take care of airflow.cfg file. So the command for it is airflow config update. So it would show you all the breaking configs by default. There are other options to also change the recommended configs as well. So you can just do airflow config update minus minus fix. So it essentially fixed the configuration. And on the left, you can see there's a backup of config file as well. Now, the next step is I'm just trying to install Airflow 3.1, and as part of that, I would upgrade the So now if I look at the version, it's 3.1. What would the next step would be to just run. I have just also removed fab because it's not required. Airflow db migrate is the command for the migration of the database. Now when I do Airflow standalone, it should essentially pop up the Airflow 3 UI, right? So this is on the standalone. Now moving on, using Astro CLI, it's I just wanted to demo it because there are certain steps which are kind of taken care by itself. So in Astro CLI, we have a Docker file in which we can just point to the right Airflow 3 tag. And we also have something called Airflow dev upgrade test, and you specify the right version for it. And what that would do is it would check for the dependencies for Airflow 3. And finally, what it would do is it would also show you the rough linting issues. And finally, you just need to run the Airflow dev start. So I have also a short demo for this. So this is so runtime 13.2.0 corresponds to 2.11, right? This is the same DAG, so I can maybe fast forward this. And if you just do, let's say, Astro dev start, it would start the corresponding 2.11 runtime image. So the next step here is I would just upgrade the runtime image and just do Astro dev upgrade test and specify the right runtime version. So this is essentially running a dependency test as well as the rough linter here. So it showed all the lint issues, and we can just essentially fix those issues as we did in the previous demo I showed. Yeah, so after all the issues are fixed, you can run the same command. You will see no issues. And you just need to do Astro dev start. It would take care of your migration as well. And yeah, so now you have Airflow 3 UI, right, with the same DAG with the Airflow 3 compatible code. So again, there are different migration strategies you could take, but the recommended one is blue-green deployment strategy. Again, this whole thing can be a talk on itself, but I can just briefly talk about it, and we can catch up later if you want. So the idea is you create a Airflow 3 deployment first, update the DAG code as per Airflow 3 compatibility, configuration changes as per Airflow 3 compatibility, and deploy each of those DAGs in this new Airflow 3 deployment. And these are like important resources you could use just to, which can be helpful if you are trying to upgrade to Airflow 3. Uh, there's a very good documentation in OSS Airflow for upgrading to Airflow 3, and also Astro has a separate documentation for it. Even Ruff has different breaking changes specified in different rules, right? So that's mostly it.